You ever have one of those moments where your brain feels like it's lagging behind reality? Like your eyes see something, your body registers it, but your mind's taking its sweet time catching up? That was me, standing in the doorway of my own house, staring at a stranger's shirt draped casually over one of our dining chairs. It was a deep navy blue, the fabric crisp in a way that screamed, dry clean only. The cuff was folded just right, and stitched into it like a signature were two little letters, BC. That shirt didn't belong to me, and it sure as hell didn't belong in my house. Now, before you jump to conclusions, I wasn't the jealous, suspicious type. Not then. If anything, I was the guy who always gave the benefit of the doubt. The guy who trusted too easily, maybe even wanted to trust too much. Jennifer knew that about me. She'd always said it was one of the things she loved most. My big heart. My faith in people. But even a big heart has limits. The rest of the house was still. No TV. No music. Just that unsettling quiet, like the calm right before a summer storm rolls in. And then, like clockwork, Jennifer appeared. She came out of the bedroom, stretching like a cat waking from a nap, arms above her head, back arched, eyes fluttering shut as she let out this long, staged yawn. Her hair was a little messier than usual, and she wore one of those oversized t-shirts that always made her look effortlessly beautiful. Barefoot, relaxed, like she'd been alone all morning, like this was normal. "Oh, hey babe," she said, her voice laced with sleepy sweetness. "You're home early." I nodded. My mouth was dry. My brain was still back there, stuck on that shirt. "Delivery got delayed," I managed to say. "Work sent us home for the day." Jennifer's eyes flicked, just for a second, to the dining chair, to that shirt. And I swear to you, in that tiny moment, a crack appeared in her performance. The yawn was too rehearsed. The smile was a little too wide. She was already shifting into damage control. "Oh," she said with a breezy little laugh. "That must be the delivery guys. He dropped off a package earlier. Maybe he forgot it." The pause before she said "forgot it" was like a tell in poker. Hesitation. Calculating. She knew it sounded weak, but she was committed now. That was the story. The delivery guy came in, got so comfortable in our home, he took off his expensive, monogrammed dress shirt and accidentally left it behind. As if, I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman I'd shared 10 years of my life with. We'd built a home together. Shared Sunday mornings in this very kitchen. Made plans. Dreams. And yet, here we were, standing on opposite sides of a lie. I didn't press her. Not yet. My face was a mask, neutral, unreadable. But inside, a slow burn had started. Funny thing about betrayal, it doesn't always hit you like a sledgehammer. Sometimes it seeps in, like water through a crack, subtle and insidious. It starts small, a gut feeling, a raised eyebrow. And then it builds quietly, until it's a flood you can't ignore. Jennifer knew that. She was counting on my silence, on my habit of avoiding conflict. It wasn't the first time she'd slipped past my defenses with a half-hearted excuse. But this was different. This wasn't lipstick on a coffee cup or a vague text message from an old friend. This was a man's shirt in my house, draped over my chair, and she was feeding me an excuse so flimsy it practically dissolved in the air. "Must be," I said finally, my voice calm. Too calm. She took that as a win. I could see it in the way her shoulders relaxed, the way her smile settled back into place. Crisis averted, or so she thought. I walked past her, headed for the kitchen. She followed, casually, making small talk about the weather, about the delayed delivery. Words that meant nothing, filling the space between us like insulation. She opened the fridge, pulled out a pitcher of iced tea, and poured us both a glass, as if nothing was out of place. As if the cuff of another man's shirt wasn't still visible from where I stood. For a moment, I watched her move around the kitchen, performing domestic normalcy with Oscar-worthy commitment. And in that moment, a memory flashed through my mind, something I hadn't thought about in years. It was our third date. We'd gone to this little Italian place downtown, and she'd laughed at one of my dumb jokes, this real, unfiltered laugh that made me think, God, I could listen to that for the rest of my life. That night, she'd worn a simple blue dress, nothing fancy, but she'd owned the room. Her eyes sparkled with honesty back then. But standing there in our kitchen, watching her now, all I could see were walls. Layers of practiced gestures and empty words. I took a sip of the iced tea. Bitter. Who's BC Jen? I dropped it so casually, so quietly, you'd think I was asking about the weather. Her hand froze mid-air, glass hovering inches from her lips, just for a split second. Then she recovered. I have no idea. Must be the guy from the delivery service. You know how they sometimes have their uniforms monogrammed or whatever. Uniforms, right? Because high-end delivery drivers are known for their bespoke shirts. I didn't push further. Not yet. There was no point in forcing a confession she wasn't ready to give. But the balance had shifted. Something had cracked open between us, even if she didn't want to see it. The rest of that morning passed in a strange, surreal haze. Jennifer busied herself with household chores, humming along to some indie playlist, as if she could scrub away the awkwardness clinging to every corner of the house. I went through the motions, checking emails, folding laundry, but my mind kept circling back to that shirt, to the initials, to the calculated way she'd spun her lie. By noon, the sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows felt harsh, exposing. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of fabric sounded louder, sharper. I noticed things I'd ignored before. The faint trace of a different cologne in the air, the way Jennifer's phone never seemed to leave her side anymore, how she always tilted the screen away when a notification popped up. The shirt wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom. I realized then that Jennifer's world had started to branch off from mine somewhere along the line. A quiet divergence. Subtle at first, like two train tracks slowly veering apart. And here I was finally seeing the gap. That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in the living room, staring at that damn shirt. I picked it up, running my fingers over the fabric, feeling the weight of it. It was real, tangible, undeniable, unlike her excuse. In that silence, the truth started to settle. Heavy. I wasn't ready to confront it. Not yet. But I knew one thing for certain. That shirt wasn't forgotten. It had been left behind. A marker, a message, maybe even a mistake, but definitely not an accident. And as much as Jennifer wanted me to believe otherwise, some things just refused to stay buried under weak excuses. After the shirt incident, life didn't exactly explode. There wasn't some big, cinematic confrontation with yelling or shattered glass. No dramatic exits, no ultimatums. That would have been easier, honestly. Instead, the days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. Like the calm in a movie scene when you know something bad is coming, but no one on screen does. Except I did know. Deep down, I knew. But knowing and admitting are two different beasts. I went through the motions, pretending that shirt was just a glitch in an otherwise normal week. Jennifer, of course, leaned into the performance. She cooked her favorite pasta on Tuesday, the one with way too much garlic because she claimed it was comforting. She sat next to me on the couch, legs folded neatly, scrolling through her phone with the screen tilted away. She asked about my day, smiled in all the right places. It was like watching a rerun of a show you used to love, but now you could see every fake laugh track, every overused trope. That's when my brain started pulling threads I had conveniently ignored. The wine. A few months ago, Jennifer had started this habit of sipping wine alone at night. Not unusual, not at first. A glass after a long day, that's normal. But it had turned into a routine. Every evening, without fail, she'd pour herself a generous glass, retreat to the balcony, and stay out there long after sunset. No invite for me. No, hey babe, wanna join? Just her and that glass of Cabernet like a ritual. Then there were the series marathons in the bathroom. That was a new one. Locked door. The soft hum of her voice behind it, sometimes laughing. When I'd knock, she'd say she was watching her shows, enjoying some alone time. Once or twice, I caught snippets of conversation, whispers, pauses, things that didn't sound like Netflix to me. I'd shrugged it off. I didn't want to be that guy. the insecure husband who reads too much into things. But now, with that shirt burned into my memory, the puzzle pieces started clicking into place. Her gym sessions had shifted, too. Used to be, she'd go to the local spot 10 minutes from our place. Suddenly, she was driving 40 minutes out of town to this boutique gym she fell in love with. Conveniently, it was far enough that bumping into anyone familiar was unlikely. The work trips started stacking up around the same time. Nothing excessive, just little overnight stays for conferences and team-building events. I'd even joked once about how her office had turned into a travel agency. She'd laughed, deflected, changed the subject. But here's the kicker. I'd never once seen a company email confirming these trips. No flyers, no schedules, no photos with coworkers. Just her word. A word that now felt paper-thin. I started replaying conversations in my head, dissecting them with brutal hindsight. Her sudden need for cash withdrawals. Something we hadn't done in years since we used cards for everything. The vague expenses showing up on our joint account. Cafe Delight, Bloom Spa, Urban Garden. Innocuous on the surface, but they added up. Places we never went to together. Then there was us, or rather, the absence of us. The quiet drift in physical closeness. Our touch used to be second nature. A hand on the back as we passed in the kitchen. Brushing fingers when handing over a cup of coffee. Little things. They'd vanished. And not in the way long-term couples sometimes fall into routine. This was deliberate. Like she was slowly pulling away from contact. She even forgot my birthday this year. Not completely. She remembered around lunchtime with a rushed apology and a last-minute excuse about work stress. But I saw the truth in her eyes. She had genuinely forgotten. The Jennifer I knew would have had a surprise planned weeks in advance. This year, it was a lukewarm text and an awkward dinner where her attention never left her phone. It was all so clear now, looking back. The signs hadn't been hiding. Every evening after work, I found myself walking past the dining chair where that shirt had sat, now empty. But in my mind, it was still there. That fabric had become a symbol, more real than any of Jennifer's carefully rehearsed smiles. I started watching her differently, not in a paranoid, lurking in the shadows kind of way, more like an investigator gathering evidence. The little things stood out. How she kept her phone face down at all times. The way her tone shifted when she answered unknown numbers. Her sudden enthusiasm for early morning errands, always solo, always vague. One night, she left her phone on the charger while she showered. For a brief moment, I stared at it, the screen lighting up with a notification. See you tomorrow, BC. There it was again. BC. My stomach twisted. I didn't unlock her phone. Part of me still wanted to believe in boundaries, in decency. But seeing that notification was enough. I didn't need the contents of the message. The initials told the story. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. There was someone else. But instead of exploding, I let the suspicion simmer. I watched, I listened, I remembered. Her stories became more tangled, her excuses more brittle. And me? I grew quieter. Not distant, but deliberate, observant. Jennifer thought she was dancing through this unnoticed, that my silence meant ignorance. She didn't realize that sometimes, silence is the sound of someone gathering clarity. The man she married was still here, but the blind trust, that was gone. Bit by bit, I was stitching together the truth. Every late-night girls' night out that never seemed to include any photos. Every business seminar that conveniently left her phone off for hours. Every new charge on our account that didn't fit into the life we supposedly shared. I wasn't building a case to accuse her. I was building a case to accept it myself. It's funny, isn't it? How we can live side by side with someone, share a bed, a home, a life, and still not see them clearly until one crack forces us to adjust our focus. That shirt was the crack. Everything else was just the light pouring through. And now there was no more room for doubt. The only question left was, how long was I willing to let her keep pretending I didn't know? They say denial is a comfortable place. I disagree. For me, it was more like a waiting room with no windows. You know something is coming, you just don't know when. You're stuck there, pacing the same 4 steps, going over the same questions because stepping into the truth feels like stepping off a ledge. But ledges only get closer when you stand still. A week after the shirt, my ledge found me. Jennifer had a doctor's appointment that morning. At least that's what she told me. She left early, barely kissed me goodbye, keys jingling like some desperate soundtrack to her exit. I had the day off, which she knew. Funny how she seemed to forget that detail. She left her car keys on the hallway table. Not like her. She was meticulous about her things. Purse, keys, phone. Always in their homes. A creature of habit. Except when she was distracted. I don't know what possessed me to check. Maybe curiosity. Maybe instinct. But I grabbed her keys, walked out to the driveway, and opened the car. Normal at first glance. Yoga mat in the back, a few reusable shopping bags, an old jacket. The familiar scent of her perfume clung to the upholstery, comforting and infuriating all at once. Then, while reaching for my jacket tucked behind the passenger seat, I felt something. Thin, hard plastic. A card. When I pulled it out, my stomach dropped. It was a hotel key card. White, sleek, branded with the name of a boutique hotel downtown. The same place we celebrated our 4th anniversary. I remember it vividly, the rooftop bar, the overpriced cocktails, the way Jennifer had insisted on taking 100 photos because we don't do this often enough. Except this time, there was no us. On the back of the card, written in her handwriting, was a single number. 514. Room 514. I sat there, holding the card like it was radioactive. Because in a way, it was. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't body language or tone of voice. This was tangible. Concrete. A cold, plastic confirmation that everything I feared was real. She'd been there. Recently. I checked the date. 2 days ago. That was supposed to be her business seminar out of town. She didn't even bother changing the location. Either she was careless or she thought I was still too blind to notice. Either way, the insult stung. I sat in her car for a long time, card balanced on my knee, staring out the windshield as the morning light poured over the hood. There's a strange thing that happens in moments like this. Time slows, but thoughts race. Memories flood back uninvited. I remembered the night she claimed she was working late while I sat at home waiting for her, reheating the dinner I'd made. I remembered her distant smiles, the ones that didn't quite reach her eyes. The excuses. The lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne. All those signs had been shouting at me. I just hadn't wanted to listen. But the card wasn't subtle. It was blunt. Loud. Unapologetic. I pulled out my phone and looked up the hotel. A few clicks, a quick call to the front desk under the guise of checking if my reservation was still active, and there it was. Jennifer's name. 2-night stay. Checked in the night of her so-called seminar. Room 514. My heart pounded. Not from surprise, I was well past surprise, but from the cold finality of it all. The betrayal wasn't theoretical anymore. It had weight. A room number. A date. A location I knew in asterisk mately. The betrayal wasn't an accident. It was planned. Blatant. I wondered if he had been the one to book it. BC. Maybe this was their spot. Maybe they toasted to their cleverness, clinking glasses in the same bar where she once kissed me and whispered, "I love how safe I feel with you." That hit harder than I expected. I didn't rush back inside. I sat in that car, letting the evidence settle into my bones. Letting it transform from suspicion to certainty. There was a strange calm in that. Like the moment after a storm when the sky goes eerily still. When Jennifer returned that afternoon, I watched her differently. She breezed through the door with the same practiced smile, carrying a shopping bag from some boutique downtown. "Thought I'd treat myself," she said, lifting it like a trophy. "Retail therapy, you know?" I knew. She hung up her keys, unaware that the key card was no longer in the car. Blissfully ignorant of the ticking time bomb sitting in my pocket. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wasn't interested in her reflexive lies, the inevitable "it's not what it looks like." I wanted more than that. I needed to understand something deeper, how far she was willing to go. Whether she would bury herself in denials even when the evidence was right there between us. That night I watched her brush her teeth, humming softly to herself. Same routine. Same song. It was surreal, seeing her perform normalcy so flawlessly, knowing what I knew. Like watching an actor hit their marks after the cameras already stopped rolling. The disconnect was staggering. But it wasn't crushing. Because clarity, while painful, is liberating. Over the next few days I observed her with fresh eyes. Every smile, every casual conversation became part of a performance I was no longer invested in. She wasn't fooling me. Maybe she wasn't even trying anymore. And me? I wasn't the audience she thought I was. I was the witness. I wasn't looking for more evidence. The hotel card had been enough. What I was looking for now was understanding. How had we gotten here? At what point did Jennifer decide that our life together was worth less than a few stolen nights in room 514? I started to realize it didn't matter. The why wouldn't change the what. And what had happened was betrayal. Plain and simple. But there's something people don't tell you about betrayal. Yes, it's devastating. Yes, it's personal. But it's also clarifying. It strips away the noise. The distractions. You see people for who they are, not the version you wanted them to be. Jennifer had made her choice. And now it was time for me to make mine. I could have confronted Jennifer at home. Plenty of chances. The kitchen. The bedroom. Even passing each other in the hallway where the space between us felt more like a chasm than a marriage. But it didn't feel right. Our home deserved better than that. So I chose the coffee shop. It wasn't just any coffee shop. It was ours, once. A small, locally owned place tucked away from the main streets. Every Sunday morning, we'd sit by the window, sip lattes, and people watch like it was a ritual. Back when simple things mattered. Before things got complicated. Before I started wondering if Jennifer's smile was meant for me or the memory of us. She didn't question it when I asked if she wanted to grab a coffee that weekend. If anything, she seemed relieved. Maybe she thought I was trying to bridge the distance between us. Maybe she thought she still had me wrapped up in the version of reality she'd crafted. That illusion was about to shatter. When she walked into the shop that afternoon, she looked the same as always, effortlessly put together. Casual chic. Hair in loose waves, sunglasses perched on her head. You wouldn't think, looking at her, that she'd left pieces of another man in our life like breadcrumbs. I was already seated at our usual table by the window, 2 coffees on the table. She smiled when she saw me. The kind of smile you give when you're relieved to find familiar ground. That smile used to make me feel seen. Now, it just made me tired. Hey, babe, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Thanks for this. Feels like it's been forever since we did this. I said nothing. Just pushed one of the coffees toward her and placed something next to it. The hotel key card. Her reaction wasn't immediate. She glanced at it, expecting maybe a gift card, a receipt. Something harmless. But when recognition hit, it was like watching glass crack in slow motion. Her hand hovered over the table, frozen mid-reach, as her brain scrambled for the right script. For a long, stretched moment, she didn't speak. Then she smiled. Not the warm kind. Not the real kind. This was a mask. A reflex. What's this? She asked, voice light, lifting the key card with 2 fingers like it was foreign. Did you book us a getaway? That's sweet. She was already pivoting. Steering the narrative. That was Jennifer's way, never meet the problem head-on. Just dance around it until you forget what you were upset about in the first place. But I wasn't dancing. Room 514, I said calmly. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine. And there it was, that flicker of fear behind the mask. Small. Quick. But enough. I don't know what you're thinking, Jackson, but it's not what it looks like. Classic. It wasn't even creative. Not even an attempt at something new. As if the weight of her betrayal could be brushed off with a recycled line from bad TV dramas. You stayed there 2 nights ago, I continued, keeping my tone even. Checked in under your name. Same night you were supposed to be at a business seminar. The corner of her mouth twitched. Her fingers tapped the coffee cup rhythmically. Buying time. Okay, listen. I should have told you. The seminar got canceled last minute, but I figured, why waste the booking, right? So I went. Alone. Just needed some space. A little time for me. It was impressive, honestly. The ease with which she layered lies over lies, weaving a story that sounded almost plausible if you hadn't seen the truth already. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. That was the thing she hadn't prepared for. My silence. She expected anger. She was ready for it. She had defenses built for yelling matches, for accusations. But calm? Calm dismantles a liar faster than rage ever could. Because it leaves them alone with their own words. Her smile faltered. You don't believe me, she said quietly. I tilted my head, not answering. Just letting her sit in it. Jackson, come on. Things have been tense. We've both been off. I thought some distance would help clear my head. That's all. I could see her trying to mold the narrative into something palatable. Reframing betrayal as self-care. Dressing infidelity in the language of self-discovery. If she said it gently enough, maybe even I'd believe it wasn't that bad. But the truth has a way of cutting through soft words. I don't care about your headspace, Jennifer. I care about honesty. Something you use to value. Her facade cracked further. The tapping stopped. She glanced around the coffee shop as if looking for an escape route. But there was none. Just us. Just the weight of what she'd done. You know what's sad? I said, my voice quieter now. You didn't even try to hide it. Same hotel. Same patterns. Like you stopped caring whether I'd find out. That stung. I saw it in the way her shoulders tensed. She opened her mouth, closed it, then said it wasn't about you. It was about me. About feeling lost. Trapped. I needed to feel alive again. Ah. There it was. The inevitable it's not you, it's me speech. Rebranded. Dressed up in therapy talk. An affair framed as personal growth. I should have been angry. I should have been devastated. But mostly, I was disappointed. Because even now, faced with undeniable proof, she couldn't own it. I'm not going to make a scene, Jennifer, I said, standing up. This isn't for public consumption. This is between you and your conscience. Her eyes followed me as I reached for my keys. For a moment, I thought she might break character. Drop the act. Apologize without conditions. But instead, she said, we've been drifting apart for a while, Jackson. Maybe this is a wake-up call for both of us. As if this was mutual. As if I'd been an active participant in her betrayal. I looked at her for a long moment, memorizing the woman I thought I knew. The woman who used to laugh with me in this very spot, sharing stolen mornings before life got in the way. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said simply. And with that, I walked out. No raised voices. No dramatic goodbyes. Just the quiet certainty that the chapter was closed. Funny how betrayal rarely comes with fireworks. Sometimes it's a coffee shop. A plastic key card. A moment of clarity. I didn't look back as the door swung shut behind me. Because when you finally see the truth, there's nothing worth seeing behind you anymore. 2 days after the coffee shop, I packed my essentials and left. No drama. No yelling. No staged goodbye. Jennifer wasn't home. I'm not even sure if she noticed right away. Maybe she thought this was just me needing space again, one of those temporary retreats husbands take before they come crawling back to familiar ground. But this wasn't space. This was departure. I had found a small loft by Lake Travis. Nothing fancy. Exposed brick walls, big windows, and an uncomfortable but somehow perfect leather couch. The kind of place you get when you're not trying to impress anyone. A place where the only thing that matters is the quiet. And that's what I wanted. Quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't filled with lies. I wasn't running away. If anything, I was finally standing still. Away from the noise. Away from the constant recalibration of truth that living with Jennifer had become. First thing I did after settling in was cut ties. Methodically. I logged out of our shared streaming accounts. Closed out our cloud storage. Canceled my presence from her emergency contact lists. I even went as far as updating my address on those small, inconsequential subscriptions, the ones people usually forget but somehow felt symbolic now. A slow, steady process of untying knots she no longer had the right to hold. It was like decluttering a closet, but instead of clothes, it was my life. Somewhere between closing old accounts and figuring out if I could live off takeout without guilt, I met Haley. It wasn't some cinematic bumping into each other moment. No spilled coffee. No faded glances. Just me standing in a local flower shop trying to remember how people choose plants that don't die in a week. She was behind the counter talking to an older couple about seasonal arrangements. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was present. Grounded. Like she was fully in that moment, not halfway somewhere else. I like that. When she turned to me, smiled, and asked, what kind of plant are you hoping not to K*LL? I couldn't help but laugh. That simple question hit harder than she probably intended. I'm aiming for low expectations, I said. Something that thrives on neglect. She grinned. You're a pothose guy. Indestructible. Perfect for people rebuilding their life or pretending to be plant people. That's how it started. No games. No layers. No hidden agendas. I left that shop with a pothose plant and a sense of lightness. For the first time in months, maybe years, a conversation didn't feel like a negotiation. I wasn't scanning her words for subtext. I wasn't bracing for the sting beneath the surface. It was simple. Haley didn't ask if I was married. She didn't probe. She didn't need to know my backstory to have a conversation. And in that simplicity, there was a strange kind of healing. Over the next few weeks, I found myself visiting the flower shop more often. At first, it was under the guise of plant maintenance questions. Then it became casual chats about music, small-town events, the best barbecue spots. Haley had this effortless way of making you feel seen without prying. No forced and asterisk Macy. Just genuine interest. It wasn't about romance. Not then. It was about normalcy. About remembering what it felt like to be around someone who didn't weigh their words like a politician in a debate. In a way, Haley was the antidote to the version of life I'd been living. Meanwhile, Jennifer's absence didn't feel like a wound. It felt like a breath of fresh air. The house wasn't haunted by her memory because the truth was the version of Jennifer I loved hadn't been there for a long time. She'd been phoning it in. And I'd been pretending not to notice. In the quiet of that loft, with my indestructible pot hose perched by the window, I started to rediscover things I'd shelved in the back of my life. Old hobbies, random playlists I'd forgotten, books I'd bought but never read because we always had other plans. It wasn't some grand reinvention, just small steps. And each step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Jennifer, of course, didn't handle the silence well. The texts started a week after I left. At first, they were logistical. Do you want to cancel the storage unit, or should I? There's mail for you at the house. Then came the emotional probes. I think we should talk. It doesn't have to be dramatic. I know things got out of hand. We both made mistakes. That we stung. As if betrayal had been a team sport. When I didn't respond, the tone shifted. Guilt trips. Nostalgia plays. I found that photo from our trip to Sedona. Remember how happy we were? I can't sleep, Jackson. I keep thinking about us. Please don't throw it all away. Twice, she appeared outside my new place. Not knocking. Just hovering. Hoping, I think, to force an encounter. But I didn't engage. I let her stand there in her carefully curated sadness, then watched as she eventually walked away. Because here's the thing about people like Jennifer, they don't mourn what they lost. They mourn losing control over it. When she couldn't manipulate the narrative anymore, when my silence robbed her of the ability to recast herself as the wounded party, that's when the cracks started showing. Mutual friends noticed. They'd see me at the city fair, strolling past booths with Haley, sharing easy conversations, laughing at bad live music. Nothing romantic. Just simple, human connection. But in Jennifer's mind, my calmness was the betrayal. Her hold was slipping. And losing that grip, that illusion of relevance, hurt her more than any accusation ever could. But this wasn't about revenge. I wasn't orchestrating some grand display of moving on. I wasn't interested in winning the breakup. It was simpler than that. I was just done. Done explaining. Done defending. Done living in the shadow of someone else's choices. Life without drama felt foreign at first. You get so used to walking on eggshells, you forget what solid ground feels like. But little by little, the weight lifted. In that tiny loft by the lake, surrounded by things I chose for myself, not for a curated image, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Not the loud, victorious kind. The quiet, steady kind. The kind you notice when no one's watching. The kind that doesn't need validation. Haley once asked me while rearranging a shelf of succulents, "Do you feel like you're starting over?" I thought about it for a second. "No," I said. "It's not starting over. It's just starting." And for once, that was enough. Jennifer couldn't handle the silence. When guilt didn't work, she flooded my phone with everything else, logistics, nostalgia, even veiled threats of closure conversations. Twice, she showed up outside my loft, standing there as if proximity could undo what she'd done. But she was no longer the center of my story. When friends spotted me with Haley at a local fair, just talking, laughing, word spread fast. Jennifer's carefully crafted image began to crumble. It wasn't the affair that hurt her now. It was losing control of the narrative. Seeing me live without her was a wound she couldn't dress up or deflect. A month later, I saw her at a charity gala. Same perfect posture, same polished smile, but her confidence had cracks. She hovered nearby, waiting for me to acknowledge her. I didn't. Haley joined me, her hands slipping into mine, a simple, quiet act of presence. That was it. Jennifer's facade broke, not with drama but with realization. She wasn't the main character anymore. I had moved on, not in spite, but in peace. And that, more than any confrontation, was the closure she could never rewrite.